Fortunately to say. Let me go over here and take a look, all right? This is the Q&A. Can't see? Oh, there's nothing to see, dude. Okay, here we go. Let me pause this here. This is the Q&A. So, I don't want to listen to that. All right, let's go. First question here. Actually, you know what? Let me see what they say at the beginning. That's what I'm kind of curious about. What they say at the beginning. Okay, here we go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another World of Warcraft live developer Q&A. Our camera has frozen. Give me 1 second.
Wait, what? Are they not sitting down? Oh, is this a green screen? Oh, they're just not standing there. Wow. This is like my stream. Oh my god, this is great. I love this. Okay.
All right. Round 2. Welcome.
Okay, all right, here we go.
To another World of Warcraft live developer Q&A. This is not a chair stream, fortunately.
Yeah,
We're actually here. My name is Josh Allen, aka Community Manager Lore.
Look at the hat, man, with the hood over the hat.
Ian Hazakostas. Ian, thank you so much for coming on again.
No, all right, guys, listen, shut the fuck up about the technical difficulties. Let me tell you something, all right? Whenever you're doing stuff online, you're doing it live, you don't know what's going on, there's going to be stuff that goes wrong, all right? And that's just the facts of life. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's fucking true, all right? That's the way it goes.
As always, Josh.
Yep. So, we have a lot of questions to get to.
Okay.
We might as well just go ahead and
fresh on the heels of Tides of Vengeance. Just a couple days in. It's been fun seeing everybody running around, catching up on the war campaign, murdering each other in war mode, doing assaults.
Yeah. And of course, everyone's very happy about absolutely everything. So we're going to jump right into how happy everyone is about absolutely everything.
Great.
All right. This is
at least they're admitting it. All right. I'm glad they're. It's better that they're admitting it than pretending like, well, we really appreciate how happy there's some people are, and then they read a comment, wow, how is the game so good? How did you guys do such a great job? And they explain how they did a better job at communication this time, right? Obviously, it could be a lot worse than that.
This is the one where I actually get fired. First question for today.
First question.
Comes
how are you so amazing? No,
yeah, exactly. How are you so amazing? No. It comes from Giamibia, I believe is how I would pronounce that. Saying, you promised us better communication. Why were so many changes undocumented in 8.1? I.e. profession requirements on crafted gear and a multitude of Mythic Plus mob changes. So we've been talking about communication for a long time. And that's been sort of
everyone likes surprises, like it's your birthday. So the patch is like your birthday.
How do we make sure that we actually have
there it is
the ability to get answers out to you guys? How are you feeling about this today?
So I think this better doesn't necessarily mean perfect. It's a continuing process of improvement. I think, frankly, you know, just like a lot of other people, we're also on Reddit, on MMO Champion, other places, reading the undocumented patch changes thread. Our goal is to actively make that smaller every time and to eventually reach a point where there's nothing of any seriousness or importance in there.
But if you're reading the undocumented patch changes, here, let me show you guys how to do something, okay? Okay, all right, so undocumented changes, okay? And this is going to be, let's see, stuff that did work doesn't work. So this is what you would do, right? Is you would take it from this one right here, and then you would put it over to here, which would be the patch notes. So if you literally have somebody that is doing the work for you for free, and you are admitting that you're paying attention to that, because people are looking at that on the PTR. They're not doing it after the patch comes out. They're looking at it on the PTR. Why wouldn't you just take the notes that you say that you're reading and put them into the patch notes if your goal is to make sure that there are no undocumented changes? Wait, what? Am I confused? Am I confused? I don't think I am. I'm not.
We think that these patch notes overall were thorough.
Yeah.
They weren't complete. There were things that weren't in them. I would say there are 3 categories of things that didn't make the patch notes. One set are, so the professional requirements on crafted gear, for example. That wasn't really a fully intended change in the form it took. Something, we have several different processes for making changes to the game. Sometimes we sit around, we say, hey, we need to change the system. We need to create something new. We're going to create a new feature. We're going to create new content. In this case, we also are fixing hundreds, thousands, in fact, of bugs that are entered by our quality assurance analysts, tracked through our system every patch. And the case in Profession Crafted Gear was, hey, a bug got entered.
This is smart. Yo, Josh, whoever thought of this, smart idea. So what they did here is they went over to OBS to use the Stream Deck to switch the fucking frame over to the next question while they fixed the camera. This is really, really smart. Good job, guys. That is professionalism.
Unlike the gear from all past expansions, the 8.0 Profession Crafted BOP gear does not require that you have that progression, that profession. And that wasn't necessarily like a team-wide, deliberate, conscious decision. It was just something that was fixed as an inconsistency and done quickly without full realization that, hey, this change will make it so that people are going to log in without pants. And they might not have any pants, and that's not an acceptable thing. So there was just some initial confusion on our end, and then as soon as we realized what had happened, we rolled that change back. And so, yes, we want that requirement to exist in Seasons 2 going forward, and that's plainly visible. You don't want to change your gear out from under you. So that type of change wasn't documented because it wasn't really an intended change. That's also why it was reverted.
Okay,
Category number 2.
Great.
Really minor changes. Like I mentioned, we fix literally thousands of bugs every patch. It isn't practical, and in fact, I think it would just clutter the overall patch notes if, all right, we corrected an issue where this belt clips into this other asset, or, we fix...
Well, we all know that's not true, because the belts always clip into everything. The shoulders always clip into everything. And we've been dealing with this for 10 years, okay? Like, let's be fucking honest, all right? If you put in, like, I mean, that's the worst. I'm fine. It's okay. I'm just saying that is kind of an example that,
fixed a typo here. Like, there's a wide range of issues, and I think looking through some of the threads, some of the summaries, yes, a lot of these things listed there are changes. They're also very minor. They're not going to cause confusion or surprise or distress if they're not fully documented.
That's not true. I was very upset.
Larger in their importance, so that when you look at the patch notes, what you see there feels relevant, and it's not just 50 pages of stuff to wade through to find the important stuff that you care about.
I agree. That's why they should just delete monk changes from the patch notes, because nobody cares about them, let's be honest. Just get them out of there. Who gives a fuck? We'll just get to the real important things. Let's look at PvP changes, raid changes, dungeon changes, mount changes, new mounts, transmog, and warrior changes. That's it. Nobody gives a fuck about the rest of it, and that'll save everybody a bunch of time.
The third category, I think, are things that we just missed. And that's where we're continuing to improve our communication process.
That's good.
Some of the changes like stealth detection in the mobs at the start of Underrot, that was a reflection of, those were changes that were made way back in September when people first started running the dungeons, and we just failed to properly capture those changes in our internal tracking. They were kind of off our radar by the time we got to November and assembling the patch notes. We're going to do better about that in the future. So it's the goal really is to get to a point where our patch notes are a complete record, and anything that's not in there, everyone can agree is minor.
So what they're going to be doing is they will be doing a better job at communication with patch notes. That's very good. Obviously, thank you, Ian. I appreciate that. Over the years, they have gotten better at communicating, that they will be better with communication.
Yeah, I know we've been talking a lot about patch notes, and we've been doing a lot of work on our end as a community team to try and make them better all the time. And even when we get feedback, like here's issues that you had with the patch notes, even still, that's the sort of thing that we can take forward and try to find better ways to improve on.
And again, I realize it's not an excuse, because we owe it to you to do better. But as an explanation, I think one of the challenges for the World of Warcraft team has been evolving some of our processes as the team grows in size, as the game grows in scope. I think a lot of the things that we are accustomed to doing worked when everyone working on a feature or a piece of the game was, you know, it was literally 5 or 6 people in a room who had full visibility into everything everyone else was doing. Now when you have dozens of people scattered across multiple offices, communication, it just becomes harder, and it's something we need to work more to accomplish.
Yep.
Okay.
Moving on, we actually have another question along this general topic here. This comes from Iladanka, who said, could you possibly add rationale for changes to patch notes and or hotfixes? This would be a huge step in communication.
There's no way they're going to do that, man. Like, do you want an actual, like, a 5-paragraph, like, essay behind why they decided to change a mob in Freehold? I mean, no, there's no way they're going to do that. Because here's why they're not going to do it. I'm going to tell you right now. Is because if they fucking do this, then every single person is going to pick that shit apart and figure out every single way that they're wrong, even if the change in itself wasn't that bad. That's why they're not. I mean, like, obviously they should have some rationale for big changes. Yes, of course. But for every change, or even for a lot of changes, probably not.
Through your eyes. So, from my end, I can say, yeah, absolutely. That's something that we want to start doing a lot more often. We do occasionally, currently, but I think that's something that we could do a lot more often. Is just make sure that the little developers notes that we'll have in there from time to time in patch notes or in hotfix notes.
Yeah, we tend to do it a lot more for class changes, where it's like we change the scaling here and buff this and nerf this, and here's why we're trying to do that to kind of contextualize the package. But when you look at a change like Mythic Keystones can no longer be deleted, there's a lot of questions without some context on our part, and that's something we should do better.
Yeah. And that's not going to mean every single change doesn't necessarily need a developer's note attached to it. If we say, like, reduce the health of some trash mobs by 20% or something like that, I mean, the reason for that change is that they had 20% too much health. You can kind of infer that there. But that is something that we are going to be doing a lot more often going
That's
forward.
actually a good thing. I'm glad about that. I like that.
Let's see. Next question.
Hopefully it happens.
Here from 4PodDRV on Twitter, who said, the recent patch 8.1 broke the popular add-on Cross RP, which gave players an opt-in means to communicate in-game across faction barriers. Was this intentional, and if not, can it please be fixed?
You're not supposed to be able to talk to the opposite faction. If somebody's a fucking orc, and you're a gnome, you're not supposed to understand each other. Because one dude is a fucking green, big, Arnold Schwarzenegger-looking motherfucker, and the other guy is a 3-foot piece of shit. Of course, they broke that.
Okay, so there was no deliberate intent to break this add-on. It was using the change that we made in Tides of Vengeance was that add-ons can no longer directly parse and do things with the chat that occurs in communities. This was done to tighten up a bunch of what were actually pretty large security loopholes and other things that could be used to harm our service if they were used by malicious authors. I know the add-on author in this case was doing it fully above board, not trying, no bad intent. So cross-faction communication is something that has a complex history, across World of Warcraft's history. There's value in, it exists to create and reinforce a certain barrier between the factions. The Alliance is the enemy, the Horde is the enemy. There's also some concerns about the potential for toxicity, where if somebody, is killing you, is corpse camping you, the communication there isn't necessarily likely to be the greatest. It's something, and so that's something that we've tried to reinforce throughout the years. Now, the reality is, it's very different when there's consent.
Azeroth is a safe space. You must consent to be trash-talked.
I mean, certainly, ever since the integration of BattleNet into our game, if you have a friend who's Alliance and you're a Horde and you want to speak to them, if they're your BattleTag friend, you can talk to them. If you're in a BNet community, you can talk to them. And so we have no illusions about trying to restrict communication between people who are really fully open and consenting to it. So we did not mean to break the add-on. That said, we can't restore the functionality. What we're looking to do, and we're working on a hotfix that should give the RP community some recourse, is actually adding an in-game solution to this problem. We're looking at adding something that we're going to call probably the Elixir of Tongues. where when you drink it, you can understand the opposite faction for a period of time.
What
you
the
can't
fuck?
speak in their language, so that the key thing there is you can't force someone who doesn't want to listen to you to listen to you.
What the
But
fuck?
if you want to understand what they're saying, then you can drink these. And so if there are roleplay
Oh
groups
my
that want to
God.
get together and act
Wow.
out a cross-faction scene, they can both
What
use these
the
elixirs.
it's in
that way
game?
no external add-ons are required.
Nuh-uh.
And hopefully it's a simpler.
No, it's not. Let me see. Just a second. Let me long boy. I'm on a long boy real quick. Brutosaur, I'm gonna get on it right now. It's called the Elixir of Tongues. Are you fucking serious? Let me go ahead and take a look at it. Okay, Tounge. Tongue. Okay, it's in it's from a vendor. Okay, let me just look it up right now. I want to see it. Wowhead. Alrighty, and Elixir of Tongues. Elixir of Tongues. Okay. Let me see if I can find this, dude. That's actually fucking insane. Elixir of Tongues 6 days ago. It's sold by Fizzy, Live Zapper for only 20 gold. Holy shit. Wow. I never expected I would see this. That's incredible. The fuck? I don't know. Like, I don't know how to feel about that. That's kind of like a really core feature of the game, that you can't talk to the other faction. But I guess you've got like Thrall and Varian arguing in like the old cinematics, so why not?
Process overall. We're working on it right now. There's a possibility we might get it out before the weekend. If not, then likely early next week.
Okay.
And keep an eye on the hotfix notes for information on where it'll be available. I think we're currently thinking like a vendor in the dollar on Underbelly. Now, this is something that's meant to be a little bit out of the way, but for those who want it and are the audience for it, you'll know where to get it and spend a few dozen gold, kind of like the Inky Black Potion, right? Just stock up, and if this is something you want to do, it's there.
That's actually really
so
cool.
We're actually just hot fixing that in. It's not going to require a patch or anything like that.
Correct.
Perfect. All right. Moving on. Next question comes from Metalish, who asked, wondering why the change to deleting Mythic Plus keys seemed like a great quality of life change made in BFA, only to be removed quickly.
Here we go, dude. All right. Here we go.
So this is obviously talking about before Tides of Vengeance came out. You were able to, if you had a key that you didn't want to run, you were able to just delete that key and get a new one. Now you can.
This is a good question.
Literally cannot delete a Mythic Keystone key.
Literally
how
cannot.
It worked in Legion.
Right. In Legion, you could delete the key. You would just never get another one. And so you could just delete your key and just be out of luck.
I can attest that's true. I did it every week.
So no one ever did that.
Yeah.
This is one of those changes that it was a quick change that wasn't fully thought through on our part, frankly. It was a hotfix that we so no one ever did that.
Yeah.
This is one of those changes that it was a quick change that wasn't fully thought through on our part, frankly. It was a hotfix that we made actually the day that the first Mythic Plus season began.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Ian. Just fucking say it. Like, if you guys just say, like, hey, yo, listen, like, we thought this was gonna be a good idea, that shit was stupid. Like, that was a bad idea, actually. Like, we don't know what we're doing. Like, we fucked up, alright? My bad. Sorry, guys. Like, if they just, honestly, I legitimately feel this way. I legitimately feel that Blizzard, every Monday afternoon, maybe Tuesday afternoon, they get some of the lead devs in there. They get Ian in there. They get maybe Holinka in there. They get a few other guys in there. And they crack open some cold ones. They get drunk as fuck. And they talk about the game. And they take questions from a poll that you can go on the website. And they just sit around and talk about the fucking game. They don't worry about, oh, well, is this good for the company? No, just fucking say it, man. And they don't even, like, just sitting there chilling, having a good time, cracking open some cold ones, talking about WoW. And I can guarantee you people would get some answers in that Q&A that would piss them the fuck off. But at least whenever you got that answer, you know that you were getting real shit. Not some sort of PR bullshit, not some sort of spin. You were just getting real shit, real logic. There it is. I legitimately think they should do that. Just get drunk with the devs on Tuesday afternoon. It'd be perfect.
Battle for Azeroth. It wasn't a baseline Battle for Azeroth change. Like, in the 8.0 pre-patch, when you were still running Legion Mythic Plus, you still couldn't, it didn't work this way. You couldn't delete your keys and reobtain them. When there were some problems with the Keystone history carrying forward from the last Legion season into the first BFA season, that left players with some wacky keystones, right? Someone might have gotten a 21 from their chest, or whatever.
It did.
This is like the first week that Mythic Plus dungeons were available.
Exactly. And so
someone says yes because everyone needs to be getting drunk on Tuesday in the middle of the day. Listen to me, man. If you don't need to be drunk to deal with the state of WoW right now, you don't care.
We changed it so that you could reobtain your keystone after deleting it as a way to allow players to sort of self-service and to solve that problem for themselves if they'd gotten into a broken or bad state where they'd failed to obtain a keystone or they'd gotten one that was unusable. And this is a case of we just didn't fully think through the consequences. It introduced a handful of bugs, and as many players who deleted their keystones and then found that they got a much lower level keystone than expected the following week discovered. But it also led to emerging social issues where players would increasingly cherry pick.
They used the word that I use.
Your dungeons, which also led to, even as we made changes to dungeons like Temple of Sethraliss or King's Rest, once there was already the self-selection towards dungeons like Freehold and Atal Dazar, it was very hard to shift out of that pattern. I mean, really, since the beginning of formal dungeon endgame gameplay, I'm actually talking about Burning Crusade here. We've ever since then, we've tried to point players at different dungeons, recognizing something that we saw in Burning Crusade, which we actually at the time kind of called the Mechanar problem, where there was like this one dungeon that was the easiest dungeon in the game.
Yeah.
And it's what everyone ran. And they ran it
every fucking day. Jeff would go into Mechanar and he would try to get the Sun Eater. He finally got the Sun Eater after a month of farming Mechanar. And his guild that wanted him to tank Karazhan for one day said, you know what? We don't need you to tank anymore. Go DPS, Jeff. Jeff vendors the Sun Eater. To this day, I do not understand why he made that decision. But the day that he decided that he didn't need to tank Karazhan again, after a fucking month of farming it every single day after school, he vendored the sword that he had spent all of that time on for seemingly no fucking reason. Oh, and then, by the way, guys, they asked him to tank again, and you know where he went? Back to Mechanar. But he never got a second Sun Eater.
Not because it was the most fun. It wasn't like the best dungeon in Burning Crusade, but it was the best place to go if you wanted to get 5 badges with the minimum of fuss.
Yeah.
And so even in Wrath of the Lich King, before Group Finder existed, when we had the heroic of the day, that was a random heroic quest from the NPC in Dalaran, and sometimes it would be, sometimes it would be Halls of Lightning, sometimes it would be Gundrak, whatever. And ever since then, we've wanted some randomization there. All that said, it's also important that there actually be some parity and that there not be dead keys, that there not be large discrepancies. Some certainly from week to week, some affixes will make some dungeons easier than others, and that's intended. But we've been keeping a close eye on the data. We're continuing to make adjustments with the goal of really ending up in a place like we did in Legion, especially by the end, where maybe there's some dungeons that you're more familiar with, some dungeons that you prefer slightly, but the same ways you would do Darkheart or Halls of Valor or Mob Souls.
They're all the same, and there are no dungeons that are very, very difficult. That did not happen at the end of Legion. There was no dungeon that was just maybe extremely hard. There was no dungeon at all that was like that. Never.
It's the pattern we want to settle into with Battle for Azeroth. And this is really just returning to what Mythic Plus was throughout Legion.
Yeah, we actually have another similar question along these lines that kind of ties in here as well. It comes from Jackalope on Twitter, who said, why were the dungeon changes not in the patch notes? And why were ones made to increase challenge and change strategy without addressing pain points of other dungeons? So obviously we've talked a little bit about, it wasn't in patch notes.
Okay.
Talking about the other side of it, though, as well. Why were these dungeon changes actually made?
Yeah, so the small handful that didn't make into the patch notes were just initial changes made, not hotfixed back in September. Since then, we've actually hotfixed a ton of changes, mostly nerfs, to a wide variety of boss mechanics and things in dungeons, and that was really where our focus was. Like, if you look back at the changes made in, I would say, late October, early November, there were a large number of them across a range of dungeons, and by and large, were all designed to make the experiences a bit less punishing, looking at major...
Here's a problem with the dungeons. There's too much trash. How many mobs you need to kill to get to the boss? How many trash mobs you need to kill? Like, there's too many trash mobs. That's the fucking problem. Like, it's not about the mechanics. Like, yeah, the mechanics are stupid, right? But the difference is that you look at the way that people could pull Mythic Plus dungeons in Legion, they could do every fucking mob in a lot of dungeons all the way up to the first boss. Now, there's no fucking way that's going to happen. It's very, very rare. Per dungeon, you think about like Maw of Souls, right? You've got the two guys at the beginning. You've got the guy that walks back and forth. You've got the buzzards that are up at the top. You've got the group of 3 guys and a group of 5 guys. And that's it. You compare that to Freehold, where you've got like 800 fucking mobs at the beginning, and it takes you 10 minutes just to get to the first fucking boss. Obviously, that's the issue. People feel like they're wasting their damn time because there's too many goddamn pirates that they've got to beat their ass through to get over to a fucking parrot. You go to Underrot, you've got to kill 10 different mobs to get over to the second boss, this weird-ass piece of shit thing that's got a giant-ass tail, and you've got to clear out the entire room. Now, at least that you can do it at your own pace. It's interesting, but there's just too much fucking trash, man. That is the problem with Mythic Plus, in my opinion. There's too much trash.
Pain points there. It's something we're continuing to do. We actually, in fact, have hopefully coming out at the beginning of next week a large other set of changes, mostly focusing on a range of trash abilities and trash packs. I think this week that we have going on right now, where it's
these dungeons have more trash than my desk.
Of the 12 affix combinations,
right?
And that's for a couple of reasons. I think overall there is more going on with non-boss mobs in our dungeons than there was in Legion. I think in Legion there were some packs that were notoriously tricky to deal with.
But why?
Whether it was double bear pulls in Darkheart, or the packs at the top of the stairs in Halls of Valor that had casters that you wanted to lock down. It feels like a lot more pulls in Battle for Azeroth off of that sort of challenge. We overall think that's a good thing. Dungeons have historically, unlike raids, which are really all about boss encounters, in dungeons, the whole thing is the encounter, and figuring out how you approach dungeon enemies and how you crowd control them and what you prioritize.
I really think they should change the way they evaluate this and the way they look at what dungeons are, because what they're saying right now is the fact that they want dungeons to be an entire encounter. Now, I don't know about you guys, but a 30-minute raid encounter is fatiguing, and it's not something that I want to take part in, okay? I hated doing Heroic Ragnaros, I hated doing Heroic Shaw of Fear for those exact reasons. They take forever. The idea that the entire the entire dungeon should be an encounter all in itself with no sense of like reprieve or, a resting period or anything like that, I think makes it an unenjoyable and unfun experience for a lot of the people that do it. It's one of the reasons why I don't like doing Mythic Plus. It's just so stressful constantly.
You interrupt. That's a lot of the depth and interesting decision-making that goes into dungeon gameplay, and we consciously approach Battle for Azeroth wanting to get away from the default solution to 80% of your problems being AoE stun, cleave them down, move on to the next. But that's meant having to take a fresh look at things like teaming and fortifying and how they play out. So in Tides of Vengeance, we actually got, just in the last few days, we've got a whole bunch of extra analytics and log data from our dungeons, because I think the systems that we had set up to monitor dungeon difficulty really were derived from Legions and mostly focused on boss encounters. We had a lot of good information on average wipe counts, encounter duration, etc., from week to week on the different boss encounters, but much less visibility into what was going on in between them. And we realized that was kind of a blind spot for us. We had anecdotal feedback from our own experience playing and from feedback we received from the community, but it's tricky to act too directly and too readily purely based on anecdotal and subjective feedback. But now, for the first time, even in the last few days, we have detailed breakdowns of the most lethal mobs and dungeons outside of bosses, which stretches of dungeon.
Someone says your argument is content's too hard, which means it's not fun. Yes, that's exactly my argument. At a certain point, whenever content is just extremely difficult and you have to be on your toes every single second for like a half hour, it's fatiguing and it's not enjoyable. I think the people play games, it's enjoyable. Having a game be fun and enjoyable is the most important thing. And I think difficulty comes hand in hand with that, but it's a scalar. And it doesn't mean that the harder a game is, the more fun it is. That's not true. It doesn't mean that just like, oh, the hardest game in the entire world is the most fun game ever. It's not. The fact is that you want to have enjoyment, fulfillment, and fun, and you don't want to be fatigued after you finish playing the game. There needs to be a balance between difficulty and being able to just enjoy yourself in the game. And difficulty is not synonymous with enjoyment or fun.
Take the longest to get through, which have the highest wipe counts, especially with teaming in play. We can look at the difference between teaming and non-teaming weeks and see where teaming is introducing an artificial difficulty spike that exceeds what we're seeing elsewhere. Anyway,
Dark Souls is not a good example at all. It's not at all. So basically, in Dark Souls, you pretty much go through and you're fighting these mobs that many of them have one or two different mechanics that you have to watch out for. And many times you just kill them in 1 or 2 hits. And then you get to a boss fight where it's a very intense, maybe 2 to 7 minutes fight. And then after you kill them, it's over, right? So you don't really have this huge long period of intense concentration that you have to have. You have bursts of concentration and focus, and then you have more relaxed periods in between. The Mythic Plus dungeons don't have that. It's all super, super focused, and you don't have that period of relaxation. So Dark Souls is not an example of what you guys were going to say. It's an example of what I'm trying to say.
So that's leading to us rolling out a bunch of changes, including removing some mobs that were added in teaming, making some mobs CCable that weren't, removing Infested as a possibility from some Lieutenant mobs that are overly punishing when they have it, a range of changes along those lines. And so this is aimed at exactly addressing the pain points in a wide variety of dungeons, hopefully getting closer to an experience where there are challenges, but there's nothing that feels frustrating.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting to think about. You look at it from an analytics perspective. It's easy to go on the forums and see people saying like, okay, this trash pack feels too hard, or this one, I hate dealing with this one, I always want to skip this trash pack, and so on. But once you actually have like logged hard data from several thousand dungeon runs, you can then look at that and you can see exactly how much more difficult that trash pack is than everything else, rather than just sort of looking at it and going, okay, I guess this feels like maybe 10% too hard. You can look and see, okay, yeah, people wipe on this trash pack 11.17% more times than every other trash pack in the dungeon. So that's actually really, really interesting. Something else that you mentioned right at the start of answering this question as well that I thought was interesting, talking about changes that were made back in September. And I think that's an interesting bit of perspective on how we end up with a lot of the changes that actually go into the patch. Is a lot of times what you're seeing when we actually release content is stuff that we were working on months ago. This is like well before we were actually able to think about things like, how hard are these individual Mythic Plus dungeons and so on.
See, the video got frozen again, and they went over to the question, so that way they could fix the audio. They're resetting the camera right now. That's what they're doing. I guarantee it.
So that's something that I found really interesting as well. Just thinking about
the video was fucked up
to get changes into the game.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And that's where, always bouncing back and forth between, especially with how much we can hotfix these days, making changes in real time to the live game, working on the next upcoming milestone, working on the next one after that. And, again, not an excuse, but sometimes things do slip through the cracks in that process, and we just need to get better at tracking them internally even so that that doesn't happen anymore.
More analytics.
All right, let's
Probably a good idea.
Just move straight on to the next question. This one comes from Hateful, who asked, "Are there any steps being taken to improve the Mythic Plus Pug experience? Currently, dungeons are extremely grueling and punishing for the casual player. It feels like without voice chat and coordination, groups just fall apart."
This is true.
So, I mean,
this is absolutely fucking true.
Making to dungeons as a whole will make them a bit more
very true
in some cases. That said, I think especially higher end Mythic Keystones are intended for coordinated groups. I think it's meant to parallel in-game raid progression and coordinated PvP, where voice chat is the norm. I guess actually a question I'd ask to both Hateful and the community as a whole. I'm actually curious what we can do to improve the integrated voice chat experience, because I recognize we don't see it being used a whole lot. The first time we introduced voice chat back in...
See, that's not going to happen. See, they have this with Xbox Live now, is that back in the day in Halo 2, if you guys ever played Halo 2 on Xbox Live, you knew that every fucking person and their mother was on Xbox Live talking shit, calling each other words that it would get me banned on Twitch if I said them over Xbox Live, and your boy Asmongold was the one leading the charge on that. I did that every fucking day whenever I came home from school, and I fucking loved it, alright? It was amazing. Nowadays, you go on Xbox Live, nobody talks, nobody has a mic. The reason for that is people are just less likely to do that because you have more casual and less invested players nowadays, because the novelty of playing with somebody in a different country or whatever is gone because you have so much more interconnectedness with like social media and everything. And I think because it's so much more common now, it's not as common for people to go out of their way to pursue things like that.
2.2 or whatever.
Sure.
It was admittedly a train wreck. Like it was difficult to set up, very poor voice quality, a lot of other problems where if you disconnected, then you also couldn't tell anyone you disconnected, etc. At this point, we're using integrated BattleNet voice chat, the same system Overwatch uses and other Blizzard games. Voice quality is pretty high. It has standard push-to-talk functionality and is integrated into parties. And I think that is designed to be that exact solution for pickup groups. Like we didn't implement voice chat with the goal of getting guilds that are happy using Discord or Mumble or whatever to stop using those and use our system. Like if you have something that works for you, use it, go for it. But in terms of lowering the barrier to entry so that when you join a pug, it's not like, oh, I have to go download this or connect to this server and make sure, with these people I'm only going to play with possibly once ever. What can we do to make that clearer? Is it lack of visibility? Because I think we were, in some ways, didn't want to push it too heavily in your face with like a prompt that pops up every 2 seconds asking you if you want to join voice chat. We didn't want to default people into voice chat because that could be jarring. Is it that people aren't aware that it's there, or you just don't want to use voice chat, period? And well, in that case, I think that there are going to be some challenges when you're looking at some higher end content that requires real-time communication and coordination, even if it's like as simple as an interrupt rotation, being able to call on the fly, like, hey, my interrupt's on cooldown, you need to get this one. That's not going to work with text, but that's, I think something we are designing the experience around, at least at the very, very high end. Certainly, baseline heroic dungeons, raid finder, the rest of that experience is not designed for real-time communication, but I think that's that ability for cooperation and coordination is one of the cooler parts of MMO gameplay, and so it's something we embrace when we're looking at our high-end content.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a huge part of like how guilds end up being formed and how you end up making friendships in games like WoW. Is you hit this difficult content, you think to yourself, okay, yeah, I want to push a 15 this week or something like that. And then you end up having to actually coordinate with other players and sort of make friends that way. So I think that is important, but yeah, the in-game voice chat, I also would be very interested.
I was just reading chat, guys. Sorry, I got distracted.
Yeah, and if you've used it and you think it sucks, let us know that too, because we want to improve that. Right? Our goal is to make that an easy, convenient, functional solution.
Moving on, next question.
Has anybody actually ever used the in-game voice chat? Because like I never have. I've never looked at it at all. I've never been interested in seeing it or anything. There's never been a reason for me to try it. So maybe it is popular. I have no fucking idea.
Comes from Destructio, who says, why do we have to wait until the opening of the Battle for Dazara lore for the new Mythic Plus season to open? And in this...
What do you mean, you dumb fucking dipshit idiots? Because they're going to introduce the new gear. and the new Mythic Plus season is going to scale up all the different dungeons to match with the new gear, and the new Mythic Plus dungeons are going to give you better gear. What a stupid fucking question. Why are they even going to answer this one? This is so dumb.
Same boat. Why do we have to wait an extra month for the new Azerite traits to be be so obviously, Tides of Vengeance just
because it's not tuned around. It's not done
for season 2 to start at this point. That's looking to the new raid, new Mythic Plus season, new Azerite traits, new PvP season, all of that. So
alright, listen, Josh. Here's what we need to do. Okay, just get a few questions to the biggest dipshits on Twitter. We'll post them up there. Everybody will know they're dumb. We'll answer it. We'll make perfect sense. We're gonna look the best. All right, they're gonna love 8.1 after this. You can just imagine that's what they're going to say, right?
Battle of Dazar'alor, it's a couple of pieces here. One, we think that cutting Uldir short at this point would be a bit too soon. I think Uldir just opened 3 months ago. It's a healthy...
Because at the 21st, the subs after 8.1 would expire, and you need a new one to play. Well, really? So 8.1 came out this day, right? It was the 11th? And so if you bought... Did it come out the 11th or the 18th? I don't even remember. It must have been the 11th. Yeah, it had to have been the 11th. Okay, so... And then you have 1 week...
Eight boss tier.
They're tricky.
Many guilds are still progressing through it, pushing for ahead of the curve, pushing for cutting edge. As we look at pacing out our raid content over the entire expansion, looking to minimize droughts, 3 months for the first raid tier would be too short, we feel. Nighthold didn't open until, I think 4.5 months or so into Legion, for example. So that's why that's there. Now,
Nighthold was really good. Whenever I think back on it, Nighthold was really good.
Really progress.
Probably the best raid in Legion.
In parallel. Mythic Plus as a system is designed.
It was the best raid in Legion.
Raiding as an endgame, smaller group progression track. Similarly, we have our PvP season that has rewards that will progress in parallel there. It's not really possible. Like when we introduced new Mythic Plus season.
Wait, oh, you're right. We did have Trial of Valor. So I think so. We did have 2 raids by now. Okay. TOV. Well, I'm not saying TOV was better than Nighthold. It wasn't better than Nighthold. TOV was an incredible raid. It was amazing, but it's just not better than Nighthold. TOV was a 3-boss raid. I don't think you can compare a 3-boss raid to Nighthold.
And all the item level cap is going up by 30. If we had that open today...
ICC started with delayed content? Wrong. Actually, TOC started with delayed content. They're like, well, here's the way it's gonna work. So, the first week, you're only gonna be able to kill the Beast of Northrend, and then Lord Draxus is gonna come out, and the second week, you can kill him. So, they only introduced, literally, 1 boss a week. And after the 5 weeks, obviously, you were able to do, I think, it on Heroic or whatever. But it took 5 weeks for all of this shit to come out. It was so fucking stupid, man.
People would be able to get gear that was equal to and better than everything from Battle of Dazar'alor before Battle of Dazar'alor was there. It would unbalance the PvP season unless PvP gear is also on that same level, and so on and so forth. So I would view, seasons as a new raid tier, new Mythic Plus season, new PvP season. All those will happen at the same time as Battle for Azeroth unfolds. The second question. Why wait for the new traits? That's something that we tied into the Battle of Dazar'alor
because they're not done doing them.
And the parallel season.
They're not done doing the traits. Like, just say it, Ian. We're not finished.
If we had added them to existing Uldir gear, people would have logged in and
you guys aren't even finished with the ones that you have now.
Everything they previously had with go get new copies of this gear. Or go get new stuff. No, that's going to happen anyway to some extent when season 2 begins. But that's a natural part of a new season beginning and a new raid tier opening. you're going to get higher level stuff. You're going to replace what you have. Versus this is all changed out from under you, and the thing that was best in slot yesterday no longer is today.
Well, and also you wouldn't necessarily want to have to replace all of your gear today, and then a new raid comes out in a month and a half, and so you just do it again right afterwards. That would just be a lot of extra stress. Okay, makes a lot of sense. Moving on. Next question comes from Sammy832, who says, it'd be nice to have a source of Titan residuum.
Fuck you, Sammy, you dumbass piece of shit. Suck a fucking fat dick, Sammy832, you dumb motherfucker. Now listen to me right now. The Titan Residium, being a limited finite resource, is the smartest thing that Blizzard has done in a long time. Everybody wanted some sort of currency that was finite that you could cap out every single week. Because the amount of sources of Azerite gear are finite and you can farm them out, and the Azerite gear can be turned into Titan Residium, they effectively created a currency system with a Valor cap just the way that we wanted it, and Sammy wants to ruin it all by creating another open-ended bullshit system that's going to make people feel like if they're not farming it 24/7, they're getting behind.
That isn't finite. I know you don't want us farming it,
so
but
dumb.
Can't you make the end of dungeons at least have a chance to drop some, or shards of it? It'd be nice on 0 Azerite drop raid weeks.
Do some dungeons,
I'm not sure there is a way to add a repeatable source of this that doesn't lead to a large chunk of the community just grinding their faces off on that source. The key here is that the residuum system is viewed, it is a delivery system primarily for Mythic Keystone dungeons. Right? It was designed to solve the problem.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Getting Azerite only from your weekly chest was frustrating and
these questions are so fucking stupid. It's got me agreeing with Blizzard. The fuck is going on?
Like it deprived players of any sense of control. In a raid, you could bonus roll a specific boss. You could focus on a specific boss that dropped a specific piece for you. In the dungeon context, it was this wide range of items. And you might only get one every few weeks, and when you did, it might not be the slot you wanted, and so forth. So the system we have set up is, as you're running Mythic Plus, even if you do nothing else, even if you get no other sources of Azerite gear, you never blow anything up, roughly every 2.5 weeks, you'll be able to afford a piece of gear that matches the tier of content that you're farming. So if you're doing Mythic 7s every week, 2.5 of those will give you the ability to buy currently at 370. And you can pick the slot. So if you're looking specifically for a shoulder, you're looking specifically for a helm, you can get that.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in the current setup, that's actually probably one of the most efficient and reliable delivery systems for Azerite armor in particular.
Good job.
Of anything in the end game. And so
good job, Sammy.
We're hesitant to make that
good job.
More lucrative in that
fuck
context.
Sammy.
That said, we just rolled out the system, so it's certainly possible we'll look at adding more sources of residuum in the future.
Good.
But for now, it's a dungeon-focused experience and something that we want to see how it plays out before we build on and potentially transform.
Okay, good.
All right, cool.
Great. Makes sense, right?
I'm just going to drop a sound good. Makes sense. We'll go ahead and move right on. Next question comes from Capitane Torpel on Twitter. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble actually pronouncing names today. This is a problem.
It's never
watching too much of my
never
stream.
Happened, no, not in the history of Q&As.
It should be the center of every Q&A bingo.
Lord
tries to pronounce the questioner's name.
Yeah. How do you plan on handling the transition from Season 1 to Season 2 regarding Titan Residuum?
So this is a really good question. And this'll make me decide whether I want to abuse my viewers to force them into trading me their Azerite gear by doing normal mode and heroic mode all your community runs or not. So can you just stockpile a bunch of Residium right now and then just have a ton of it and buy all the mythic gear on the first fucking day? That'd be amazing, but I mean, I don't think that'd be a good idea. We'll see what happens.
So we're trying something a little different this time around compared to some of our past currencies like this. You know, when we've had these endgame currencies like Valor or Nether Shards, and we introduced a new tier of content.
Oh,
in the past,
Nether
we'd
Shards.
either often just hard cap what you could carry over into the next season, or we'd introduce an all-new currency, effectively resetting your old progress. We don't want to go down a road of having 4 different Titan Residuum currencies by the end of the expansion. We also dislike caps. It's kind of it's sort of this awkward experience where you feel like, okay, season end is coming up, we should hoard.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is actually just continue to inflate as we have. There's no reset. Every tier of gear costs roughly 3 times as much as the previous one. So going from, a 385 token is roughly 3 times as expensive as a 370 token. A Mythic 10 chest gives you roughly 3 times as much as a Mythic 7 chest. When Season 2 begins, well, there's just 2 new tiers being introduced. So it's 400 and 415 tier. 400 is going to cost roughly triple of what the 385 does. 415 will cost roughly triple of that. So it's basically like 10x cost going from 385 to 415. But also, the rewards from disenchanting or sharding 400s and 415s will be proportionally higher. Also, what you get out of your Season 2 weekly chest will be proportionally higher. So if you got 60 out of your Mythic 10 today, that number is going to be closer to 600 when you do a Season 2 Mythic 10, which is of course harder, gives you better loot.
I can get them all. So here's what we do. Is soon I can do it on my warrior. I'll do all gear on every difficulty, get every single piece of Azerite gear that I possibly can, melt all of it down to Titan Residium, and on day fucking 1, I'll buy all 415s, man. All 415s, no big deal. That's a great idea.
So that means the general ratios, continue to hold. It'll take you, 2.5 weeks or so to buy every individual piece of gear.
Good idea.
2. And it's up to players to decide what they want to do with their currency now. If you've been struggling.
Method, Josh, your theory crafter, listen to me, man. Josh was a great idea. But let's not forget who invented community runs. On the first day, what was it called? How to use personal loots to your advantage. Let's see. Asmongold? Maybe this is it here. Let me check if this is it.
What's up, y'all? It's me.
Okay, let's see if I can find it. This was the first day that the personal loot changes came out. And I immediately started talking about ways. Yeah, there it is. That's old Asmongold right there. Look at me, man. Look at all that hair that I used to have. This is exactly what I was going to do. So, I came up with this idea. Wait, what the fuck? 7.0? Oh, no. This is from a way, way long ago. Force personal loot. How the fuck? Where's the video? What was it called? 6.0 personal, personal, how about this? Personal loot Asmongold. Maybe this is it. What loot system is best? This video was from like 6 years ago or something like that. 5 years ago. It was whenever I first started making videos. I came out with the idea of having people do loot trading the day after the patch that allowed personal loot to trade, allowed you to do personal loot. Literally the next day, I figured out a way to use it to my advantage and abuse people again. And that's how I got my Tusk of Manaroth back then in Warlords of Draenor, I believe. Or was, I don't remember even when it was. It was like the next fucking day. I'll have to show it to you guys and find it somewhere. I don't think it was the video that I showed before, though. Okay, let's go back to this. I thought I'd be able to find it. It was my idea.
Willing to find a good mythic, or to find a good Azerite helm. The system's right there for you. You can, fill that hole in your character's gear. If you want to hoard all of your residuum from now until the 22nd, when Battle to Zarlor opens, that might give you like a 1-week head start on the season, but it's up to you whether you would rather have something now or a fraction of an item then.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
It would be more than 1 week if it was increasing by 30%.
It would actually probably make a lot more sense to just go ahead and buy a piece for that slot right now, because at the very least, that means you go into Season 2 with a better piece of gear. It'll make it easier to clear those dungeons. It depends on your
goals, right? I mean, if you're somebody, if you are, you're pushing to complete the Mythic Plus feats of strength, you're trying to do in-time 10s or 15s, you want to get your gear a bit better, you're looking to get cutting edge, and you want that now, it may well be worth it for you. And it's going to be something for everyone to decide based on their own playstyle, their own preferences. Alts will view it differently than mains that are already fully decked out, and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. So TLDR, buy pieces now if you want them. If not, that Titan Residuum will still be useful.
Yep. Yeah, no cap, no reset. It's just costs go up. But
here's how it works, guys, because people don't understand what a number is. Let me explain. Let me notepad here, and I'll show you guys what the numbers are, because obviously nobody knows how to fucking math. Now listen. So let's say, let me open it up. Let me open up Notepad. There we are. Okay, it's fucked, but it's fine. Is this working here? Okay, it is. All right, so we've got, all right, so 30% is going to be the 370, and let's say it's 100, okay? And then let's say 30% more is going to be a 385. So that's going to be 130. So then 30% again, which is going to be the 400, and that's going to be 100 and what is the let's see, 130 106, was it 163? I don't even know. 166. Let's see, 36 35 so you have the 15 and then the 60. Okay, all right, so basically it's gonna be fine, and that's what I was trying to say exactly.
But the rewards will also go up.
Nice. Next question from Wonderful Heaven, who asked, the purpose of Artifact Knowledge is to reduce the gap between players who play a lot and those who do not.
Yeah.
With AK on hold for 6 weeks, there will be a massive gap going into next tier that won't be easily closed for several weeks. What are your plans to prevent this in lieu of Artifact?
Ignore it, because who gives a fuck if some sweaty nerd wants to sit in their goddamn mom's basement and farm out island expeditions for 14 hours a day so he can have an item level 341 or however level 41 necklace? Let him do it. Let him fucking do it. It's not a big deal.
Artifact Knowledge. So
it's not a big deal.
That was increasing, basically increasing the rate at which your Heart of Azeroth would level up.
So this is effectively, this is the same way it worked in Legion. If players who played through Legion may recall, initially Artifact Knowledge, now at the time it was more transparent because you were researching it manually via work orders in your order hall. But when Legion came out, the cap on knowledge was 25. And then I want to say in 7.2 we raised it to 40. And then it just stopped there. And there might have been, you might have had more concordance levels to work towards, but knowledge had gotten you far enough to be competitive with the content that was available. So similarly, knowledge here is paced to match the available content and the needs. Right? The most powerful piece of gear available today requires a Heart of Azeroth level of 33 to fully empower. I think that's a Mythic Shoulders.
This is the shoulders, yeah.
And so this knowledge will get you there. Now, Season 2 is going to come out, and knowledge will resume then. I think if we had knowledge scaling in the background between now and then, in a lot of ways, you'd actually see a larger effective gap when the raid comes out. There are some people who are done with the tier, and they're taking a break, and they'll be back for Battle of Dazar'alor in Season 2, and that's totally fine. But a world where knowledge continued past what Season 1 really required would lead to people who had been grinding AP for the next month and a half, starting out the raid, being able to fully unlock all the powers of their armor, or most of them, while others who'd taken a break.
Well, why not just let them do that? Because you're going to get rid of the system in 8.2 already. You said you were going to get rid of the system. Why wouldn't you just let people get a little bit farther ahead and not have to worry about doing a system that you yourself have admitted multiple times in multiple different ways is flawed and broken?
Use anything. Even yes, that gap would shrink over time, but that's a more jarring place to begin things than I think where we're going to end up.
Okay.
Once knowledge resumes accruing, that gap will shrink, and that is ultimately the goal. On the undocumented patch changes front, by the way, I know there's going to be skepticism here. Just to be clear, this actually wasn't a Tides of Vengeance change. This was something that when Battle for Azeroth launched, we had, okay, we're going to have 15 weeks of knowledge that increment, and unfortunately the last week of knowledge just happened to fall on December 11th. Now, of course, we should have made this clear up front, but going into the next season, just to say it now, I forget off the top of my head exactly when the end date is, but we will announce that. Knowledge will begin accruing on January 22nd. I'd expect it.
Somebody said Sammy's in chat. Yo, Sammy, what up, bro? Fucking idiot.
To tick up for maybe 3 months or so, and then it will again pause until Season 3 begins. And so That's the system that we're currently looking at, which again matches how this worked in Legion.
Okay, and just to be clear, we're not saying that we
somebody gift them a sub so I can ban them.
To tell you about this. It's more that it's not that we forgot to tell you last week. It's that we forgot to tell you a while ago.
Exactly, and that's the reason why I didn't make it into the patch notes. Was we didn't think of it as a patch change. We didn't think of it as like, oh, we're going to consciously choose to stop increasing knowledge as part of Tides of Vengeance. Let's just not tell them. It was, oh right, there's this system that we made 6 months ago. That's just kind of been ticking along in the background.
Yeah.
All right. Next question comes from Nightstalker314, who said, "Any plans on?"
Yo, we know him. Yo, we know that guy. It's this guy, dude. It's this fucking guy that always he always criticizes me on Twitter all the fucking time, man. Look at him. This is the guy. We legitimately got someone from our community to have a question answered. We got a real question through, man. Holy fuck, dude. This is amazing. Wow. We made it.
Making the Heart of Azeroth more relevant or engaging. During Legion, we had weapons to look at and actually use, be it just for a new attack. Many players didn't hide the artifact skins via transmog. They liked them. So why must the Heart of Azeroth feel so bland?
Okay, so
I just love how he said that. Okay, dude.
A lot of aspects to unpack here. A bunch of points. So yes, we have a lot of plans to make the Heart of Azeroth more engaging, and we agree that I think on several levels this fell short of what Legion artifacts offered. Baseline, some of it is on the story side. The Magni and Corruption of Azeroth storyline was more of a B plot, at least initially. It was a side plot compared to the central Horde and Alliance conflict.
B-movie plot.
And while, yes, this substance Azerite is part of the war between the factions, what you're doing for Magni and the power of your heart isn't a central element of the plot in the way that your artifact weapon was a key to how you were able to overcome the Legion. That's something that's going to change as we move forward into Rise of Ashara and beyond. And so the Heart of Azeroth will become a much more central story element, and the plot line involving Magni will become much more central.
Okay.
And so that's part of it. The neck is inherently less visible than a weapon. At the same time, I think we wanted there to be something that sort of permanent slot that you carry forward, that you imbue with power, that you upgrade over the course of the expansion. Didn't want to go back to weapon a second time in a row. I think there's something.
Here's what they should have fucking done. Is they should have just made a new slot. Like, people are mad because there's not a new slot. Why not make it a tabard? Why not make it some sort of like a tertiary item for each different class? So paladins have librams, hunters have a quiver, mages have a spell book, warriors have a I don't know, like a shield or something like that. I'm not sure what that would be. The DKs would go back and have sigils again. Why not give each individual class something special that mattered, that wasn't necessarily visible except on a cosmetic level, that didn't change anything, that you could level up independently, and it wouldn't cannibalize existing current slots? Like, there's no rule that says these are the only slots that the character can ever have. Yeah, a cock ring slot. Let's think outside the box.
I think people are enjoying being able to get.
You could also think outside the cock,
and that's always been one of the most
probably
upgrades, one of the most prominent aspects of your character, and so you didn't want to write off the weapon slot permanently. On the system side, we know we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, warriors could use a battle standard.
We want to make the Azerite system as a whole a lot better, a lot deeper, a lot more satisfying. I think reflecting this is
class
sort of
talismans.
post-mortem thoughts, reflecting on the system that we launched Battle for Azeroth with, I think was one
Blizzard, like, one thing that I think is really bad, right, for the game, and I'll be honest, like, I'm just gonna be like completely real right now, is that I feel like they're afraid of complexity. I think that they're afraid of adding any sort of complexity to the game because they think that's going to alienate their audience, right? And they think that if the game is too complex, people won't be able to understand it, and if they're not able to understand it, they won't play the game and they'll quit. I think this is a very flawed perspective they have, and I also think there are a lot of games that are very, very complex. Some on a surface level and some on an under level, right, a secondary level, that are very fulfilling and fun for players to engage in because the mastery over those systems is fulfilling because it's player driven and it's driven by knowledge and understanding and some sort of catharsis that a player receives once they are able to overcome and master a system. Now, because there are none of those systems in the game now, the amount of actual self-fulfillment that you get out of understanding your character or do anything, it doesn't exist anymore. So we've lost the glyph system, we've lost the old talent system, we've lost all of these different systems for the sake of streamlining and transparency and making things easier to understand and removing the illusion of choice. And in a lot of games, of course, there's always going to be a best way to do them, but the illusion of choice at least fools some people, and not having any choices doesn't fool anyone at all.
Really, one central flaw that's at the heart of a lot of what feels bad about it.
Oh, reforging, that's another one.
So on the one hand, we want artifact power to be relevant, and it's cool, I think, to have goals to work towards. I think one of the nice things about artifact...
I'm going to pause one more time, okay? I want to read something stupid in chat. Somebody's quoting me twice. They said dungeons are too hard and complex, and the game isn't too complex in the same hour. Yes, that's right. So, once upon a time, there was a girl, and she broke into a house with 3 bears. Now, she was hungry, and there was porridge on the table, and there were 3 bowls of porridge. She took a drink out of the first bowl of porridge, and she said, "Wow, this is too hot." She put it down. Doesn't want that. Then, she took a sip out of the second bowl of porridge. "Wow, this is too cold. I don't want that." And she finally got to the third bowl of porridge, and she drank it, and she said, "This is just right." There is a large gray area between something being too hard and too easy. And certain things can be hard in some ways, and that's good, and certain things can be hard in other ways, which is bad. It's not that simple.
Fact power in Legion was that it was...
Yeah, and then the bears came downstairs and they killed her. That's what happened.
And so it gave you a sense of steady progression that complemented some of the random spikes of itemization. Right? You could clear your raid for the week and not get any upgrades, or run a dungeon.
You don't steal shit from a bear.
You would, sometimes you wouldn't, but you'd always be progressing towards these meaningful goals. And what felt best about the artifact system, especially early on, was when you had, let's say, a new gold medal talent to work towards, something that was, flashy, that would meaningfully change your gameplay and give you a big boost of power. And we saw even in Legion, once players got past that, the desire for artifact power and really the appeal of the artifact on a lot of levels faded significantly. Whether you were just, leveling up Concordance or getting 0.5% to your overall stats from getting a minor trait here or there, when people were in that mode, you didn't really care about artifact power either. So on the one hand, the system works best when there are exciting goals to chase.
Yes.
On the other hand, because we are relying on armor and items that you replace to deliver those powers and to unlock them, it feels really, really bad if you get a new item, you get a new piece of armor from a raid, from a dungeon, from your PvP chest, and the powers on it that are interesting, that are exciting, are locked, and you can't use them yet. And in fact, that would likely lead you to just keep that item in your bags and not feel like it was an upgrade right away, not feel like it was something you were supposed to use. Okay. And so that led us to give you the most potent spec modifying abilities up front. We've tuned the system at this point where they're almost unlocked by default if you're keeping pace with the heart progression overall.
I'm not.
But what that means is all you have to look forward to by getting Azerite, by getting artifact power, is these utility abilities. And while those are handy, they're not exciting. They're not, this sort of power that's going to motivate you and excite you as you achieve these goals. And so we're kind of...
Do you guys ever scratch your dick and smell your hand?
Stuck between those two challenges as we're trying to shape the system. So where that leaves us is, as we look ahead to Rise of Ashara and beyond, we want to pretty significantly pivot.
Wait, Rise of Ashara? Oh, fuck. Was that leaked? 8.2, Rise of Ashara. Fuck yeah. Okay, dude.
How we're approaching the system. I think Battle of Dazar'alor in Season 2 is likely the last tier of Azerite armor that you'll really have to work to unlock the powers on. The thinking is, from Rise of Ashara and beyond, you'll just get new pieces. They'll be fully unlocked based on your heart level, and you can just make the choices you want to make on them. You can dial them in, customize them, and it's just armor that presents choice. And at that point, we'll shift the meaning of artifact power.
I want to replay that just so you guys can hear that, okay? Because, all right, just 1 second. Listen to this.
Battle of Dazar'alor in Season 2 is likely the last tier of Azerite armor that you'll really have to work to unlock the powers on. The thinking is...
So he said really have to. That doesn't necessarily mean that you won't have to. We'll see what this is going to be, right? Ian is a lawyer. He speaks very specifically, and so I think there is a reason why he added really have to work rather than have to work, and then have to work doesn't mean that you can do it passively. And how much is passively? How much do you define work? Ian obviously is thinking through all of these things as he's choosing his vocabulary and explaining these answers in order to obfuscate the actual goals of what he's trying to do. But this is a good thing. And we've only wanted this since beta.
From Rise of Ashara and beyond, you'll just get new pieces. They'll be fully unlocked based on your heart level, and you can just make the choices you want to make on them. You can dial them in, customize them, and it's just armor that presents
obfuscate
choice.
Means
and at that
make
point,
harder for people to understand
we'll shift
or see
the meaning of artifact power and the evolution of the Heart of Azeroth into something that lies in the heart itself, into ways of customizing and selecting powers that you're not re-earning, that you're just permanently unlocking and augmenting and choosing among within the heart. We'll have a lot more details of this system as Rise of Ashara gets closer. It's something we also want to use to add some more flashy visuals, even potentially some active abilities.
Good. 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 I remember every single time I would go on the beta, I would shift-click the Heart of Azeroth, hoping that they would actually do this. And they're finally doing this. Good. Awesome. Thank you, Blizzard. Guys, why the fuck does this have to take through half the expansion for you to get it right? This is what the problem is. We need more community iterative development. Like, be more fucking open with this shit, man. Like, why do we have to go through months of a bullshit system that it's gonna take? I mean, like, when did I do the mountain climb last year? I don't even remember. I did this mountain climb and I got up to the top of the mountain. It was a great time, etc., right? I did this thing, and now it's just so fucking ridiculous, man. Like, y'all need to fix this shit before people start hating it. Like, it doesn't need to take until the second major patch of the expansion for you to fix something that should have been fixed in fucking beta. Thank you, but goddamn, like, this needs to be faster next time.
That start to feel closer to the connection that you had with the artifact weapons in Legion, and something we're excited about, but it's a little too early to get into the details of the design, but in the months to come, we'll have a lot more to share on that front. So just wanted to kind of lay out the general philosophy for how we're approaching the challenge ahead.
Nice. That's definitely something interesting to look forward to. I'm excited to learn more about that. So
they release it broken on purpose so they can fix it later on for content. Because if they make a bad system, people will be mad that they made a bad system. But then they can fix it later on, and then everybody's like, wow, they're listening. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. There it is.
We'll have to we will make sure to share more about that as soon as we possibly can.
It might even find its way into the patch notes.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Ian.
Next question from Silent Crits, who says, do you plan on increasing gear reward item levels of Warfronts and World Quests as time goes on? A little disappointed that the new Warfront still rewards 840
Just
with the
say
new
it,
raid
Josh.
coming out. I cannot speak today. Decreases
Disincentivizes the
incentives to do
incentivize. Just say it.
Shouldn't the gear scale up with new content? So I guess trying to reiterate that without
yes, it should
constantly.
scale up.
Are we planning on increasing the rewards from Warfronts and World Quests?
So okay, so well,
this is what I was talking about with the drunk streams. Apparently, they're already doing it.
There are different pieces there. The Arathi Warfront, that is going to remain at the level that it currently awards.
What a bad decision. Like, what an absolutely bad decision. Like, do you just want nobody to do it? Like, nobody's gonna do Warfronts if they don't give you good gear. Like, what are you gonna do in the third major patch? Whenever Arathi Warfronts are still giving you 840s, and the new zone that we go to just fucking dicks you down with, or 340, right? I know the guy said 840, right? But like 340s, and the new zone dicks you down with 400 item level loot. Nobody's going to do Arathi Warfront. Why are you going to invalidate the content whenever you could just scale it up and it'd be fine? You don't have to make it competitive, but at least make it relevant.
Darkshore Warfront, it's actually, since it came out in advance of Season 2, once Season 2 starts, the rewards from that are going to bump up by another 15 item levels to better match the stuff from Battle of Dazar lore. Like, we didn't want to have, we wanted there to be enough to do when Tides of Vengeance came out. Like, really, in terms of our reward structure, the default would have been the Warfront also waits until Season 2, but think of this as a preview, and so the rewards are a little bit suppressed, so they're not completely breaking our item system in the meantime, but that's how it will go forward. Now, not everything scales up, right? Like, Uldir rewards aren't getting better when Season 2 starts. I think when we have certain pieces of content that you progress through, you outgear, you leave behind. If you go back to them, you can go back.
There are intrinsic and unique rewards that come out of Uldir that make Uldir compelling for people to go after, right? You have the Mythic Gahun title, you have the transmog sets, and you also have the fact that because you have better gear, you can trivialize Uldir and complete it faster. Warfronts are completely time-gated, which is why Ian actually has already admitted that you're not able to go in there with a pre-made of 20 people, because then it would just have people sitting around, because Warfronts are fundamentally time-gated. So you're going to get into a system where, like, Uldir is not a good example, because Uldir has a bunch of other reasons and ways that people can go in there and get something out of it, and they can also expedite the process with gear, and gear doesn't necessarily have to be the motivating factor. With Warfronts, gear is the only motivating factor.
Back to them for alts, for achievements, for cosmetic collection if you want to finish out your set, but it's not just automatically scaling up. Now, World Quest rewards over time will continue to go up in terms of their ceiling. That's derived, however, from your own personal item level. And as we've discussed in the past, some of the overall difficulty of the world also scales up a bit to match your own progression. And so that's just keeping World Quests and keeping the outdoor world relevant. But that's based on gear that you've gotten from other sources and is reflected.
But, so here's the other thing, is that Uldir being invalidated, right, is a bad thing, but at least it thematically makes sense. If it's going to be Battle for Azeroth, then the Horde and the Alliance are going to be fighting over Arathi Highlands for the entire time. So thematically, it would make sense for Uldir to diminish in relevance because the story progresses forward. The Arathi Warfront does not have the same logic behind it in the narrative storyline that would make sense for it to diminish in relevance in the same way that Uldir would. It doesn't even make any fucking sense. Like, all of these, like, none of this makes any fucking sense.
Some increased challenge there. But Warfronts, we view more like raids, where there's something that this was the Warfront for this tier, now here's a new one. Now, as we mentioned,
but why? Like, but why? Like, why not just make all the Warfronts the same? Like, there's nothing innate, like, there's no difficulty. It's not like the Darkshore Warfront. Like, obviously, you can't make Uldir the same as Battle of Dazar Allure. but they're not progression systems for gear. These are like ancillary content systems that are basically an experience. It's not even about the gear. Like, who here that you know what? Because everybody's gonna say I do. Let's be honest with ourselves. If they scaled up the Arathi Warfront, nothing would change. There would only be a positive outcome because more people would be able to do the Arathi Warfront and feel like their time was not being wasted. I really don't like this answer.
BlizzCon, though, in Rise of Ashara, we're looking at adding heroic warfronts. And
Good.
when we do that, it's likely that both warfronts would once again become relevant in that tier. And so for organized groups that want to go in and tackle them, that'll be a relevant reward at that time.
Okay. So what he's saying is he's going to make the heroic warfronts scale up on the same level. I mean, like, at that point, it's like, why? Like, I feel like if you carried the logic to its conclusion, it would not make sense. And I wish that maybe I should make a post about this. About how, like, they diminish content so fast and they're not, like, because this is another really, really bad example of this is in Warlords of Draenor in 6.2, whenever it was 6.2.3, I think, whenever they added in the Valor upgrade system, where you could get Valor points and you could use the Valor points to upgrade your gear. So you were not able to upgrade gear from Blackrock Foundry and Hellfire Citadel, which created an artificial gap between Blackrock Foundry and Hellfire Citadel, the initial 6.0 raids, and the new 6.2 raid Hellfire Citadel, right? Did I say Blackrock Foundry and Heimdall? I meant Blackrock Foundry and Heimdall. And you were not able to upgrade those items at all. Now, why were you not able to do that? No fucking reason. They basically made the previous content even more invalid than it already was by the artificial system and an artificial exclusionary tool that made it to where you were not able to upgrade the previous gear from the previous raids. There's no reason logically that would be the case unless you just wanted everybody to do the same raid over and over and over. And if that's the fucking case, how is that fun to spend all goddamn day, all goddamn week in some green ass fucking castle trying to kill a dude that you've killed 10 years ago? And Gul'dan, who's supposed to be dead.
Okay. So the Arathi Warfront, once Season 2 starts, the Arathi Warfront will be something that you probably don't really, if you're keeping up with your gear progression at least, it's probably something you're not going to want to do for a while, but once we get around to heroic Warfronts, then it might be something that you want to go back to later.
Yeah, and again, for alts, collectors, a whole wide range of reasons why you would do it, but it'll be more similar to what Uldir becomes.
There's no reason to do
once Season 2 begins.
Okay. Makes sense. Question here from
Not
Noble
really.
N6, somewhat related, asking, can we get Warfront rotations to speed up a bit once a month to participate in a particular Warfront is kind of lame.
So in practice, that ends up being more like, I think, once every 3 weeks or so, and we looked at the rotation rate. I think
what they're going to do is they're making it to where the Warfronts, they're going to add more Warfronts. Okay, these are just the first two. There's probably going to be like 4 at the end. So, or probably 3, actually. So there's always going to be a Warfront up. And so at the beginning, you only had the Arathi one, right? It's only up sometimes. And now we have 2 of them that both have independent schedules. And those schedules kind of complement each other. And then whenever we get the 3rd one, I don't know what that's going to be. Now we're going to have a bunch of these Warfronts that we can just do. And there's never going to be a point where you can't do Warfronts. That's what they're going to do.
Big change.
That's why they're not going to speed it up.
2 Warfronts that are rotating
there
in parallel.
There it is.
In practice, there will be a Warfront up pretty much half the time, and you know every week and a half or so, you'll have a different Warfront to queue for. We're trying to balance giving everybody a chance to participate with the speed of the overall rotation. I think, when it pops, it's up for a week because many people only log in on weekends. Many people, log in at different times during the week. You want to avoid for such a central piece of content the sense that, oh, you just missed this Warfront. Sorry, come back later. Different pieces of content have different levels of availability. On the other end of the spectrum, we have assaults that are up for 6 hours, then off for 12 or 13. Where if you miss it, it might happen while you were at work. There'll be another one tomorrow that's hopefully at a more convenient time.
So how does that Warfront, the like Arathi sometimes being available, Darkshore sometimes being available, how does that factor in with the gear rewards being there? Because obviously, like, once Season 2 starts especially, I think most of the people who are really keeping up are going to only want to do the Darkshore Warfront.
Good question, Josh.
Coming up 2 weeks later doesn't really...
That's
nobody cares.
I mean, I think it depends on...
Great question.
There's other types of rewards from the system as a whole, though, too, right? There's artifact power from turn-ins, there's war resources from doing the outdoor content.
That's not a. But yes, not the Warfront itself.
If you're just looking for that one piece of gear, then the best stuff in Season 2 is going to be you get to alternate, doing the Darkshore Warfront, getting what will be a guaranteed eye level 400 piece, and then killing the Darkshore world boss for a chance at another 400 piece, and that will be every other week. Ultimately, I think clearly, obviously, it would be great to get the rewards more frequently, but they reward the way they do in part because they're as infrequent as they are. I think if you could do a Warfront...
So you have to wait an entire month for a piece of 340 gear.
Every 3 or 4 days, we probably wouldn't be able to let you get an eye level 400 piece, let's say, from it in Season 2, because that would obsolete large swaths of other content like Mythic Plus and rating in terms of relative availability.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. This one comes from Hedon, who asks,
thanks for
as a Horde player on a Horde-dominant server, I will never see the...
Dumb fucking piece of shit, idiot. It's not a Horde-dominated server because Warfronts are dynamically populated based off of who else is in there. You don't even understand how it works. Why would you even ask this question? Fucking dipshit.
30% war mode bonus. This is a problem. I guess it's also not really a question. It's more of a statement.
Fair. So, I guess one clarification. So, there's nothing server-specific about this system. War mode and war mode balance are region-wide. So, the entirety of North America, the entirety of Europe. Doesn't matter whether your server is Horde or Alliance dominated. The way the system works is every weekly reset, so Tuesday mornings in North America, Wednesday mornings in Europe, Thursday mornings in Asia, the system looks at what the relative balance was in participation between the two factions in war mode during the prior week, and will dynamically adjust the bonuses. So, hopefully, if more Alliance participate, it's likely that we'll see the Alliance bonus actually start to trickle down a little bit from 30 to 25 to 20. I would be surprised if we ever saw a 30% Horde bonus, but it's possible. If more Alliance than Horde are participating in war mode in a given week, Horde will have a larger bonus to participate than Alliance will. Obviously, we're at the other end of the spectrum.
I don't know why it's only a snapshot on the reset. I don't know about that.
This system as a whole, of course, is we're looking to address and to restore overall balance in the system. I think when war mode first came out in early Battle for Azeroth, ratios and participation were actually pretty good. However, we had some bugs and quirks with the way we were setting up our war mode and balancing the shards that led to sort of snowballing effects of Alliance feeling outnumbered by Horde, turning off war mode, and that becoming more and more of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think looking at the initial interest and participation in war mode, there is enough interest and demand on both sides to make for a healthy balance across our shards. And it's been awesome, actually. We've seen a lot of that in the last couple of days, even. Assaults have done a great job of bringing people in war mode who are looking for world PvP together, and we're seeing more and more Alliance turning on war mode.
It brings me together with Horde players that want to kill me.
Doing it.
Nice. Yeah. I mean,
I wouldn't do it for a 300% bonus.
I've been playing Alliance this expansion, and
sorry, Josh.
I've been actually enjoying going out there in war mode.
Bullshit.
Getting beat on extensively.
Bullshit.
So we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next
question.
Such
bullshit.
Hold on a second here. Sorry about that. So next question comes from Corina, who says, in 8.1, we will be able to acquire some rewards from island expeditions with currency, but this doesn't include the items that were available before 8.1. Will previous items be added to the vendor at some point?
This is important.
So I think island rewards are something that will continue to evolve over the course of the expansion.
Okay.
So we recognize that there are as time goes on for collectors, you may come down to just wanting a small handful of specific things to complete your collection. So it's likely that we'll use this vendor or another system to allow for more specific targeting of the last few pieces that you need before the expansion's over. But right now, it's more there to just complement overall acquisition. And as time goes on, it's likely we'll evolve that focus, but nothing specific to announce right now.
Okay.
They don't want to say yes because then people stop farming. They don't want to say no because then people criticize the distribution method. And why are certain items in the warfronts or the islands and not others? So they say it's very likely. So everybody is just guessing and nobody can pin down anything to criticize. Just add the vendor for every item and just make it more expensive. Like, it's a PR answer. Like, no, trust me. Like, bro, like, do you ever read my tweets? Like, read my tweets. Do I commit on anything? Hopefully I don't end up dying. So this opens up the window that if I don't feel good, I can end the stream. Going to try to stream again today. Try implies a non-definite commitment. Let's go down here. Had a great time killing back to Dark Souls. I'm not sure if I'll be on tomorrow. Unclear. Okay, I'm not dead, but that means I'm going live. Not feeling 100%, but I'll do the best I can do. That means that if I end the stream early, nobody can be mad. Haircut stream very soon. What is very soon? It's an undefined term that excites people while still not committing to anything. Still have my cough, but I'm a bit better. I feel like a piece of shit, but it's not really much I can do. I'll be live tomorrow even if I'm still sick. That was one commitment that I've made. I'm really fucking beat. I can't promise a stream tomorrow, but I'll promise I'll try. Non-commitment. I'm planning on stream tomorrow unless it gets worse. That opens up a window that I can leave. Okay? The current plan is to be back on Monday. I think I'm close to finishing Dark Souls. Okay, that was actually, I did commit to that one. Let's see here. Welfare Wednesday for a bit, then maybe Dark Souls. Maybe. Whenever it comes to not committing on anything and using language to make sure that people are simultaneously excited but not promised anything, I'm very good at it. I know what they're doing because I do it.
And just as a side note, I do want to apologize for the camera issues that we're having. For what it's worth, I do have a long list of improvements that are coming for the studio. New camera just moved to the top of that list, so we will be making sure that we do not have these issues in the future. Moving on to the next question. This one comes from Rick Rose, who said, it was previously mentioned by Ithasins. You know, I don't think I've ever actually tried to pronounce his name before. I've read it, but I don't know if I've ever tried to pronounce it.
That's Caden.
Ithasins? Whatever.
It's kind of disrespectful. Whatever.
It was previously mentioned by Ithasins back in September that new ways to obtain vicious saddles were being worked on for 8.1. What are they?
So yeah, straightforward answer here. In Season 2, so you have your overall participation progress bar that shows your progression towards the seasonal mount. In Season 2, once you fill that up and earn the Season 2 exclusive mount, the bar will just reset, except at the end, this time will be a vicious saddle. And you can refill that as many times as you want during the season, getting vicious saddles by doing that. So just earn your season-specific mount that's only available during that season first, and then continue playing for saddles.
Cool.
Great.
Easy peasy, straightforward. Next question from Coils, asking kind of a broad question here. The question is, are you satisfied with the state of class design as a whole? The community seems to have a negative opinion on this topic lately.
So, I mean, no, we're never truly satisfied with the state of class design. It's hard to imagine a world where we say, like,
we say you're never truly satisfied, which simultaneously admits that the current state is not acceptable, but also alludes to the fact that you're a perfectionist and you always want to improve, and it doesn't necessarily admit that the current state of class design is necessarily worse than any other state or point in time of class design, because you are never truly happy with it. Oh, he's a tricky one. He's a real tricky one.
Yep, we're done. Mission accomplished.
Right.
Walking away.
Actually, you were done. You were done whenever you created Arms Warriors in patch 5.4. You were done whenever you created Nighthold Fury Warriors. And you were done whenever you created Warriors in Siege of Orgrimmar, and probably also the beginning of Mists of Pandaria. You were done. That was it. It didn't need to ever get better. Everything was perfect. It was finished. And then you did WoD, and just fuck me, right?
For the classes. It's something we grapple with on a lot of levels. Macro level, I think there was definitely a change in our philosophy on class design as a team. Really about 8 years ago, I would say. I think as we started for the first time looking to streamline, looking to manage the scope of what a class entailed. You know, for the first few years of World of Warcraft, every expansion was, all right, here's a bunch of new spells and talents. Here's a bunch of new spells and talents. And then we were starting to get to a point where on a few levels, like literally action bar space, keybind space, you know, just the conceptual, the scope of a given class, those things were starting to hit their limits. We were, you know, approaching class design for an expansion saying, all right, we need to add 3 new things to this class because they're getting 5 new levels or whatever. And it wasn't clear what the classes actually needed. And it's like, they have all of these tools. We can start giving them more things that are directly eroding at the uniqueness of other classes just in the name of piling on more abilities. And we recognized the harm that was causing and started to pull away from there.
I agree with that. I think that there are a lot of classes that have unique abilities and unique utility and are interesting in their own way. And I don't think that should be eroded. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't add any new abilities. I think that what they should do is they should look at the philosophy and what does each class mean, right? Warriors, for example, this is like this is like Maximus from Gladiator, all right? This is Spartacus. You're going around and you're killing people. You look at Paladins. This is like Uther the Lightbringer. Paladins can heal. Whenever you start giving Warriors heals and Paladins mortal strikes, then you lose that. They need to look at what is the mythos behind each class, define the class fantasy, define what the limitations of the fantasy are, define the class's advantages and its disadvantages, and then create abilities that build into those advantages and disadvantages and philosophy behind the class. That doesn't mean you just don't make any abilities because you're worried that they'll erode each other. Like, they need to define what is a warrior, what is a paladin, what is a warlock, what is a mage. And after you know that, then making decisions on what to do is simple.
I recognize, from the perspective of an individual player of an individual class, getting new stuff is cool and is exciting.
Yeah.
And we lost something big by pulling away from it. From an individual player's perspective, I think for the state of balance in the game as a whole, from a sense of class uniqueness, spec uniqueness, because really, in a lot of ways, increasingly these days, we effectively have 36 distinct classes. I think 10 years ago, it was a question of, like, are mages good this patch? Are rogues good this patch? Whereas now it's, well, is frost good? Is fire good? Is subtlety good? Is outlaw good? Or is it fun? And so it's a more complicated...
The reason why that happened is simple. Basically, I mean, like, that's always been the case. There have been some mage specs that are better or worse, but I do think that's kind of a good point. It's because there's so much more homogenization behind gear, right? Back in Burning Crusade, if you were a Frost Mage, or you were a Frost Mage, for example, you would create the Netherwind, or not Netherwind. Netherwind was tier 2 for mages, but you would create the Shadow Weave set, or whatever the hell it was, for level 70, and it would give you increased frost damage. Those types of things made it to where you couldn't just switch over to the Spellfire set and play fire. So now, because you don't have fire damage, you don't have frost damage, you don't have shadow damage, etc., you only have these specific things, and it's harder to get gear that matches in the right way. Or it was hard to get gear that matches in the right way, and now it's a lot easier, so people have much more options of switching back and forth to different specs.
Solution space. And, you know, part of what we've settled on the last couple of expansions is, all right, we're not going to add a ton of baseline functionality to classes. We're going to have deep expansion-specific systems that add new modifications to your class abilities, give you some new toys to play with, but aren't permanently growing that space. And that, I think, part of what we're seeing is that that's not as satisfying as we'd hoped in a long-term sense.
Well, of course it's not.
But a lot of the time we grapple
at least they admit it.
And this is, you know, our perspective in working on a game that's entering its 15th year. We are grappling with short-term excitement versus long-term cohesion and sustainability. And, you know, there's a little bit of, you know, gun shyness from being burned from past mistakes of, man, we did this thing that was super exciting at the time, but wow, this is having long-term challenges to balance. How do we clean this up? Where do we go from here? That often makes us more conservative. And in practice, we realize that's you know, that can lead to short-term dissatisfaction. And
that wouldn't happen if they had already planned out ahead of time what the classes are supposed to be good at. So like Shadow Priests are really good at multi-dotting. Warlocks are really good at multi-dotting, but they also have a healing component to it. Shadow Priests have on-demand healing to their multi-dotting, which makes them unique in that way. Shadow Priests are not very good at AoE damage. Warlocks are better at AoE damage with like Seed of Corruption, and then you have things that are really good at AoE damage like Demon Hunters and Warriors. I don't think there should ever be a situation like in in Legion where Shadow Priests almost had no AoE utility, or at least it felt to me like they didn't, or at least it was much less than other classes. I don't think that should happen. There just has to be more. They have to predefine it, and then it will be easier for them to make new abilities.
That's something we are continually talking about, continually grappling with. You know, the so-called pruning that happened in Warlords and Legion was I think, very, very controversial, very contentious at the time.
Well, people didn't like it.
In Battle for Azeroth, we've taken a step back from that. We certainly weren't looking to contract further. We, if anything, re-added pieces of utility, whether it's, you know, tools like Enrage dispels, things like raid buffs, and we're not sitting around currently thinking, oh, our classes and
that part is
have
true.
Too many abilities, too much going on. We need to simplify. That's not where we're at. The separate piece of it that I think we also grapple with a lot is keeping up with the dynamic nature of community perception and the metagame that these things dictate, which is much of which is driven by our content design, much of which is driven by the PvP meta. You know, when all it takes is a couple of raid bosses that very heavily emphasize a certain ability or a certain damage profile, whether it's, you know, burst AoE or split cleave or whatever, and suddenly these classes become much more favored in representation. That trickles down to what pug leaders are looking for, and at the end of the day, a lot of the, you know, core complaints are driven by a sense of individuals just wanting to find a home in groups, wanting to find a spot in pugs, and being turned down. All of that is stuff we need to work on. And
here's a way to indirectly work on that. So if the problem is people are not able to find groups in pugs, then a way to indirectly solve that problem and work towards minimizing that problem, because you're never going to solve it, is create more social systems in the game that allow people to play with other people that they trust, so that same expectation of flavor of the month gameplay is not as strong. So if you indirectly create more social systems that keep people together, the concerns of people in pug groups would be less important. I'm not saying it wouldn't be important. This is important, what he's saying. But you should come at it from both directions.
And so it's a mix of class-specific issues where, we can say, okay, feral druids they feel very weak when it comes to AoE damage.
He says, no, that's bullshit. That enables elitism in-game attitude. Listen, buddy. If I looked at your armory, I bet you've cleared normal old deer 0 times. If you think having to interact with other people is elitism, you are a bad, lazy, antisocial player. And you're not even really a player. Like, just go play a single-player game. It's not elitist for people not to want to play with you because you're shitty. And let's go ahead and take this a step farther. What is elitism? It's not wanting to play with people based off of preconceived notions that you are superior to them or they are inferior. Only accepting certain classes is a form of elitism, in a way, because classes are elite. It's not innate to the player, but it's innate to what the player is doing or what the player is controlling. So even by your own admission, getting into guilds and people that trust you as an individual would remove elitism because you wouldn't have the same expectations of what class you were playing. So it's like you're wrong in like every way.
And that makes them undesirable in dungeons. And while we don't want AoE damage to be a strength for that spec, it can't be, a prohibitive weakness. Let's address that. Those are in many ways the easier problems to solve. The tougher ones are just the overall challenge of keeping 36 specs feeling distinct and unique, but also relevant. And so, that's where utility comes in. That's where, that's also an ongoing conversation between class and encounter design as we look to actively create situations in our raids, in our dungeons.
That's a good one.
Highlight and emphasize the abilities
I'm ready for this.
To certain specs or certain classes so that they can feel valued. And it's not just a question of who's bringing the most damage, because there's always going to be someone, no matter what we do balance-wise, there's always going to be some bar that's at the top. But if people are all bringing different tools, and those tools are all valued in different situations, that feels like a more sustainable state that we can hope to achieve.
Okay. And next question, which I actually accidentally went to a little bit early there, comes from Forsey, who asked, can we expect any form of legendaries throughout BFA, for example, Mr. Pandaria?
This is what we've been waiting for.
Rings, the way that
okay, good.
Obviously, it was very different.
Here we go.
Well, obviously, very different from how Legion legendaries worked, where those were just everywhere. But then even legendaries prior to that, where those were more of a quest line that you built up to.
Okay, a legitimate question
planned right now, but it's always possible where it makes sense. I think we had that bonus legendary from Argus in Antorus that was, just a rare little surprise that some people could come across.
Woo! Surprise! Wow! Oh my god, I got the best trinket in the game! Woo! Wow! I'm so surprised! Ooh. Fuck you, Ian. You said we'd be happy and we'd be surprised to see what it was going to be like whenever the Pantheon trinkets came out. And then we got this motherfucking bullshit that's a random drop of 1 in 1,000 for Aman'Thul's Vision. Nobody fucking wanted that. And the reason why you didn't announce it at the beginning is because you fucking knew that. And the reason why you had to get rid of Master Loot, because Personal Loot was dog shit. Nobody would fucking use it unless you forced it on us. Oh, players are going to be surprised to see how they get the Pantheon trinkets. Oh, it's going to be completely fucking random. Wow. The fucking break.
I think where it fits the story, where it fits the content we're doing, it's something we're always open to, but nothing specific planned right now.
All right. And I believe we got time for one more question.
This one better not be stupid.
We'll grab this one here from Mamea, who said, what's the status on uncoupling artifact pairs for transmog? I really want to mog shield and sword.
Oh, yeah, they do need to do this.
So, unfortunately, nothing new to announce on this right now. We did a bunch of work to let artifact transmogging work at all. And because there's some, it's a wide range of things that break the normal transmog rules. Like, we want you to be able to transmog into your two-handed mace if you're a holy paladin, even though in practice you're probably using a one-hander and shield with different animations and a different overall look. And a key part of that, to say nothing of things like the Demonology Warlock Skull, a key part of that was just in terms of how it was designed and implemented, the artifact is a single thing that just kind of stomps on both of your equipped slots.
Right.
And that's what lets it override a lot of these restrictions, so it's not clear how we'd roll that back without also breaking some other parts of it. It's something we'd like to do. We totally recognize that, you know, during Legion, if you were an enhancement shaman,
just fix it. Just fix it. Like, I don't know, like, what else is there to say? Just fix it. Come on. Let's go.
You may want half of your Doomhammer transmog and half being something else.
I'm confused.
Or same deal with the shield and the sword on prop Peli. But there's no, in terms of the technical implementation, we don't have a clear path to get from where we are now to a situation that's the best of both worlds. But it's not something we are saying definitively no on, just not right now.
Okay. Well, that pretty much wraps up all the time that we have here today. Thanks, Ian, so much for coming on here.
Anytime.
Sticking through the camera issues and so on.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Sorry about the technical difficulties.
Yeah, no, that's 100% my fault. We will have that fixed for the next time we do one of these. Which, by the way, we did get, I was able to confirm we've got another one in the works for looking for early January. We're going to actually have some people on here to talk about some story and lore focus stuff. So
cool.
Keep an eye out for an official announcement on that.
Oh, good.
But until next time.
Yeah. Merry Wintervale. And
Merry Wintervale.
I will see you
how politically correct
all in 2019.
See it.
So, Ian, can you just come on Allcraft? Like, that'd be good, dude. Like, if you want to come on Allcraft, or if another dev wants to come on, and that'd be great. It'd be something, you know, like you come on for like an hour and a half or so, and we'll take some questions from chat, and, you know, we'll do like some straw polls and see what people want to have the answers to. Because obviously somebody needs to know what the fuck's going on, right? You give these answers. Like, Josh is never going to challenge any of the answers. I mean, come on, man. In on Allcraft be pretty awesome. Yeah, I don't know why he doesn't do it. Like, I'm waiting, man. I'm fucking waiting. What'd you guys think of the Q&A? Like, what'd you guys think about it?